everybody, my name is Doug, and I'm so excited to spend some time talking youth ministry with you. And I want to begin by thank you for investing some of your very valuable time to care for teenagers and to point them toward Jesus. Because I know that being a youth worker isn't easy. As a matter of fact, last night, my oldest child, she's a rookie youth worker in a church in Southern California, and she was just telling me that there about this one kid who was totally obnoxious when she was teaching. She was speaking to a bunch of junior hires, and this kid was just driving her crazy. And she said, "Dad, he was so wild that I couldn't decide, do I continue teaching or do I step off stage and just strangle him?" Of course, she was kidding, at least I think, but I knew exactly what she was talking about, and I bet you do too. As a matter of fact, if I was there with you right now, we'd probably look at each other and nod, and we'd be thinking about that one kid in the ministry. So I know that everybody can relate to this, and I'm so excited to share with you just some insights on how you can care for and discipline that one kid. Actually, the truth is that discipline is part of being a disciple. And you can't be a disciple of Jesus without having a sense of discipline in your life. So you as a youth worker, you're actually helping that kid grow spiritually when you use effective discipline. So how do we discipline teenagers? By providing discipline in a way that's both loving and effective. And I know that most people in youth ministry leadership, doing discipline can feel challenging and scary and uncertain. You want to delegate all the discipline to maybe the point person and think, the one who gets paid, let him or her deal with it because they get paid to do the tough stuff. And it makes sense because you want teenagers to like you, and honestly, dealing with conflict and discipline is something we'd rather avoid altogether. And if that describes you, please take comfort in knowing that you're not alone. I've been doing youth ministry for 30 years, and I still don't enjoy being the bad guy. But I do understand the importance and the need to discipline in youth ministry. So let's do this. Let's think big picture. You want the teenagers in your youth ministry to have fun, but you also want them to be safe and responsible and learn and at least be moving in the direction of maturity. Because our job isn't just to entertain teenagers. We're also called to guide them toward being a growing and mature follower of Jesus. And unfortunately, not everybody that walks through your ministry doors has been disciplined well, right? I mean, every group has a kid like my daughter was describing, and even the teenagers who typically have good behavior, there are moments when rebellion and disobedience seem more appealing than calm and obedience. So with all of this in mind, let me share just 3 quick principles that I think can help you disciple kids with discipline and that you can use truth and grace. Okay, so the first is this. Let students know that you believe in them and that you expect appropriate behavior. See, a common mistake in youth ministry is to start off with low or no expectations. Teenagers used to being treated like children, mostly because they commonly act like children. But what I found is that when I start with the assumption that teenagers are capable of more, they're capable of a degree of maturity, they actually rise up to meet that expectation. So I'll often say things like, "Hey, I know a lot of adults don't think you're capable of this, but I really believe that you are. I believe that we can talk about deep things for 15 to 30 minutes without you grabbing each other and farting and messing around, because I believe that teenagers are capable of more than we give them credit for." So what if you were one of the few people in their life who were pointing them to a level of spiritual and emotional maturity beyond where they're currently at? I mean, that's discipleship. What if you were that caring adult who was saying, "Hey, I believe that's who you can be. And I believe that's who you are." So the first step is to let your students know that you believe in them. The second principle for effective communication is to communicate clearly. You have a youth ministry environment with effective discipline. You don't want a lot of rules. And actually, you don't want to waste your rules because students are only going to remember and follow a few anyway. I usually tell students that I've got 2 goals and 2 rules. It goes like this. The 2 goals are I want you to have fun and I want you to think. So when it's time to have fun, have fun. I mean, seriously, have a blast. And I love to have fun with teenagers. And I want this to be a fun place. But when it's time to think, hey, let's turn the corner and think. And the two specific rules connected with thinking these are mine. You don't have to copy them if you don't want to. Just look, 1, don't talk while others are talking. And 2, show respect for others, especially when they're sharing from their heart. See, for most students, that's all it takes is 2 goals and 2 rules. And for the ones who don't embrace those simple rules, well, then you may need to be a little more specific in your communication. So if a student disrupts your group, talk with him or her afterwards and do it one-on-one and explain why their behavior was not acceptable. And you might say something like this. Hey, when you're talking while I'm trying to teach, it disrupts the whole group. And to be really honest, it kind of makes me feel angry. And then you want to be really clear about the consequence if that behavior happens again. Now, I don't think it's fair to surprise students by disciplining them with consequences that they didn't know about. So communicating clearly means you establish some very clear ground rules as well as very clear consequences. The third principle of effective discipline is to enforce lovingly. See, rules are only as strong as their consequences. Without the follow-through of a consequence, rules won't actually be followed. And before you know it, your ministry turns into pure chaos. So you can beat back that whole craziness factor by enforcing the consequences lovingly. And here's a couple ways you might do it. First, don't embarrass a student. Okay, even though you might feel the urge, and I know how easy it is, the urge to kind of humble that student because they're humbling you, try to stay in control. Because our goal as youth workers is to build them up, not break them down. The goal is not to kill their spirit. It's to lovingly discipline them by helping them adjust their behavior. So if you ever feel like you're going to discipline in anger, I'd encourage you to hold off and do it another time, or allow another adult to take the lead while you blow off some steam. I'd also encourage you to follow up that discipline with some encouragement and affirmation. And I might say something like, hey, David, I want you to know that I really like you a lot, and I'm so glad that you come to this Bible study. I love your heart. But, and I also love the other teenagers who come here too, and I just can't allow the behavior of one person to affect everyone. And I'm sure you understand. And honestly, I just want you to hear from me. I'm so glad you're a part of this thing, and I really look forward to seeing you next week. Okay? Please know, I've been around youth ministry long enough to know that this stuff isn't easy. And even if you were to follow everything that I just said, there's something else that might go wacky and it's going to require a different approach. I get it. But it's good to have somewhere to start. So start by expecting good behavior, then communicate clearly, and finally, enforce lovingly. All 3 of these actions must be done with grace and truth. And the heart behind your words and actions should be that you deeply want your students to become loving disciples of Jesus. And speaking of Jesus, make sure you're talking to him along the way, and you're asking him for a wisdom that is greater than your own. See, that dependence on Jesus and his strength, that should be a given. Okay? Now, thankfully, discipline is not your only job as a youth worker. There's a lot of other elements in youth ministry that are more fun, but we can't fool ourselves. Discipline is definitely part of the whole youth ministry package, and you can do it. I know you can. And as odd as it seems, the teenagers that you're caring for, they need your loving discipline. They need you to be a part of their journey. So thank you so much for your commitment in youth ministry and your commitment to keep learning as a leader.